Avengers Assemble. So, hey, you know what I realized I haven't done in a while? Ranked the Marvel movies. And actually, given that we have no idea when the next one's going to be released anymore, was supposed to be originally, I think, this month for Black Widow, but now, who knows? I guess there's no better time than to rank the ones we've got. And given that we have completed now phases 1 through 3, I can now rank the entirety of the Infinity Saga. And I am going to include Spider-Man Far From Home with that, because even though I guess it wasn't directly part of that saga, it was still counted as part of phase 3. So that's in there in the mix. Now, I don't think I did this the last time I ranked, but I know at least one time when ranking these, I included the seasons of the TV shows. I'm not doing that this time because Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage were the only ones I watched every season of. I don't know why I watched both seasons of Iron Fist. Something's wrong with me. Anyways, I'm restricting it just to the films this time. Starting at the bottom, working our way up. Number 23. Iron Man 2. Now, I suppose it's worth saying before getting into this, I don't think any of these are horrendously bad. Even the ones at the very bottom. Even this one, even Iron Man 2, is just mediocre and a letdown from what the film that came before it. But as a movie in and of itself, it's inoffensive, but there's really nothing to write home about here. The aspects of Tony Stark get taken up another notch, and it works for his overall character arc in terms of the progression across the series, but there isn't much else to recommend here. The villains are bland, both of them, both the one he has to fight and the corporate villain. I don't really care for either of them. There's a couple of decent action scenes, but there really is very little that is memorable at all about this film, aside from possibly the introduction of Black Widow. So, moving up, another sequel that didn't fly too well. Number 22, Thor 2, or Thor: The Dark World, officially, because for some of these they do numbers and others they don't. And This one I find slightly more memorable than Iron Man 2, largely on the back of Loki, because he gets some good stuff. But the problem with this one is it just takes itself way too seriously. It's not to say it's 100% devoid of comic moments. It has a couple, including some at really weird times that don't work. But the overall tone is just so dour, it's not fun. And the key thing for most of these movies is they're fun, and when they're not fun and still work, it's because there's a real reason for them to be something other than just fun. Thor: The Dark World is dark because they decided it was gonna be dark. Also, again, very unmemorable villain. What a waste of Christopher Eccleston. Number 21 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. This one basically rides on the charm of the cast. Other than that, I don't think there's anything to recommend this. Some boring corporate style villainy, because the actual villain that they're dealing with, for the most part, it doesn't make sense for Ghost, who is a decent villain, all things considered, but it doesn't make sense for her to have henchmen, and they need someone with henchmen so that they can have more action scenes. Now, the action scenes as presented are actually pretty well done. That's another point in its favor, but it's just a contrived film. The situations they're in to get into these action scenes, the way it progresses, it's just very lazily put together. Number 20, Spider-Man Far From Home. I will admit I may be overly cruel to this one because of how excited I was for it. It was a villain we'd never seen in film before. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. You'll be seeing that way higher up on the list than this. But it just didn't click. And it's difficult to pin down why in any big sweeping ways, because it's just a lot of little things. The pacing is off. The chunks of time devoted to things and the flow from one story beat to the other feel awkward and jarring and don't flow very well for me. too much time is spent lingering on the awkward humor, and I felt they did just the right doses of it before, because awkward humor can really grate on me quickly, but they didn't find that balance with this one. I was just really let down. Number 19. At this point, we're actually just getting into the films that I don't even think have anything that wrong with them. I just don't enjoy them as much. Iron Man 3. I know a lot of people take issue with the Mandarin twist. I don't. I think it's perfectly fine. But there are other things about this that aren't great. The villain, again, once we do the twist and reveal the Mandarin, which again, that twist I'm with, but our actual villain, kind of bland, kind of uninvolving, not particularly exciting. There's some neat ideas, there's some good dialogue, there's some good chemistry, but it isn't, there aren't enough strong things building on each other. It's just little pockets of pretty good. Number 18. I know for some people, including some friends of mine, this is going to be the most controversial entry on this list. Captain America, the First Avenger. I'm sorry, I don't like it very much. Steve Rogers himself, he is phenomenal. He is perfectly cast, and there's even a couple of decent supporting turns from Stanley Tucci, and Peggy Carter is done pretty well, but I honestly think she's a little underdeveloped and a little bit tropey here. But for the most part, it's the format and the villains. The villains let this down badly. Red Skull looks amazing, but is generic as hell, and Hydra is never, ever threatening in this thing. They get knocked back so often they might as well be Cobra from G.I. Joe. I really don't find a lot to like in this, aside from the central performance, which was perfect, but it was the only thing that was really great. Number 17, The Incredible Hulk. The one we all don't talk about. The Edward Norton one. The final confrontation, I think, is the biggest letdown here. The Hulk fighting the Abomination, it should have felt more momentous. Ultimately, it's just pixels smashing pixels, but that in and of itself doesn't have to be a criticism, because some of the best action scenes in this franchise involve the Hulk, and it's pixels smashing pixels, so it can work, but just for some reason it's just a little undercooked here. That said, the performances are good, and pretty much across the board, and I feel like this movie actually gets Bruce Banner pretty well as a character. I think mainly it's the climax where it lets it down. Number 16, Ant-Man. Now, this was just fun. This one's just a nice, fun, good time. Paul Rudd, I'm not like really on the Paul Rudd love train the way a lot of people seem to be, but I do enjoy him, and he's good for this part. The villain, again, very bland. That's a big issue with these bottom-ranked ones, is lousy villains. But Michael Douglas is great. It's a good mix. There's good chemistry. It's a fun supporting cast. The only reason it's not higher is there isn't a lot of weight to this, and that's not to say you can't have a lighter, fluffier film that ranks higher. It's just it really has to hit my personal buttons to boost it up, and there are going to be things like that higher, but this, it was just like, it was fun. Number 15, Thor. Going back and revisiting this one, I know I used to put it higher than this, but the thing is, a little bit like Captain America, the First Avenger, it's buoyed by central performances. What this has over Captain America is, whereas Captain America had one perfect casting, Thor has several. At the bare minimum, Loki and Thor themselves, absolutely perfect. I would also argue that Odin is also perfectly cast. So that altogether gives it a little bit more of a boost than strong central performance was able to give to Captain America, the First Avenger. Aside from that, it's good, but you can tell this is early Marvel, that they're still getting their feet under them. It's pretty big, but it's not as bold as it needs to be. It's not as bold as this franchise got later on. Number 14, Avengers Age of Ultron. This one's really weird, because this is one that is less than the sum of its parts, because many of the individual scenes, interactions, I love. Like, some of my favorite stuff in the MCU, yet somehow when cobbled together into the finished product of the film, they don't quite mesh. You can feel that this was supposed to be a longer film, that this got trimmed down, cut down, and in ways that you can see the stitches. in some of the areas, particularly when it comes to the integration of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver with Ultron. I feel like there was way more there than we got in the final version. Likewise with Thor, but also the stuff we get with Hawkeye's family. I love it. I actually really like Ultron as a villain. I think he's great. There's a lot of great scenes, bits. The thing with the hammer and the way that's how they all know they can trust Vision because he just picks up. That's great, but like the pieces just don't quite fit right. Number 13, Doctor Strange. So this was one of the last, like, straight-up origin stories that Marvel told. And I think by this point they'd really refined that formula. It is an origin story, and it fits the template of that pretty cleanly. But there are little things that really boost it. Again, part of its performances. Benedict Cumberbatch is great. Chiwetel Ejiofor is good. Benedict Wong is terrific. And, of course, the conclusion. Like, I don't think these movies make or break on their climax, but a good climax can really just make the film sit just right. And the Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Oh, that was good. That was real good. Number 12, Guardians of the Galaxy. The first one. There's a lot of good here. I love the character dynamics. I love how much thought has been put into this world, how imaginative it is, how bright, how colorful, how much fun it is. Again, though, we've got a very weak villain, and the conclusion, I get what it's doing on paper, but it doesn't quite pull together for me. This is still a lot of fun, though, but they build on it better later. Number 11 is Captain Marvel. This one's kind of an odd one, because this is one that I really love on paper, and I like it as an experience, but I kind of like it better in principle than in reality. But in reality, I enjoy it, and in principle, I love it. What I mean by that is things like the way it ends. The way she just blasts the bad guy back. Basically, as he's standing there yelling, "Debate me!" God, I love that. I think Brie Larson does a terrific job. I think the discovery of her own past is really well handled. I think it's really fun watching Samuel L. Jackson get to be so front and center and also have a bit of a lighter vibe as a younger Nick Fury. That's really cool. It's just, for whatever reason, in the moment, I don't like it quite as much as I feel like I should, given how much I like the component pieces and on paper what it's doing. I don't know. It works. I just feel like it should have worked a little better. And number 10, Iron Man. The original, the one that started it all. Again, largely hinging on essential performance, but holy crap. What a performance. If you were going to make one performance the backbone of your entire cinematic universe, this was a good one to go with. Robert Downey Jr. is so good at embodying thoughtfulness. You can see the wheels turning in his head, so he's so perfect working as someone whose greatest power for all of his tech is his brain. And watching the man work, it's just phenomenal. Like, there's other good stuff. His chemistry with Pepper is great. Happy's a lot of fun. The villain's actually not too bad. It's just good. It's just a good time. Number 9, Thor Ragnarok. Yeah, this was the bold feel that Thor needed. Bold, confident. Because the first Thor was pretty bold, but it didn't quite go full steam ahead as it wanted to. Second one went grimdark, and I don't know why. Especially because it didn't even go whole hog to that. But just as a vibe, it didn't work for it. Here, bright, fun, colorful, yet still carrying a decent amount of weight in terms of what is happening to the characters and the impact of everything going on. The performances are terrific. It's got a great villain. We've got Jeff Goldblum, for crying out loud. It's not perfect. I actually still really take issue with how casually the Warriors 3 were killed off in this film. But what works phenomenally. Number 8, Avengers Infinity War. This shouldn't have worked. After all the buildup to, oh God, what if this guy gets these stones? Or all the planting, all the hints of the stones and Thanos, this shouldn't have worked. Thanos as a villain shouldn't have been able to pay off all the buildup. The threat of the stone shouldn't have been able to pay off all the buildup. All these characters being juggled, this should not have worked, but man, it does. And more than that, it can hit you in the feels at numerous points. What happens to Gamora? That's heartbreaking. God, Peter, right in the feels, and just the devastating place it leaves things. It is very much deliberately pulling a Empire Strikes Back level gambit with how it chooses to end. That's a hard thing to pull off, but it does. Number 7, The Avengers. Another thing that wasn't supposed to work. Basically a massive crossover movie. Yeah, we've established these characters. Yeah, they're all in the same universe, but are you really going to throw them all together in one movie and have it work? You're going to balance all these big personalities, people who had headed their own movies, and now you expect them to share the screen, not muscle each other out? How could you possibly expect that to work? Oh, look at that. That's how. It's a smart script. It's really well constructed. The interactions are key. It never loses sight of the way that the characters play off each other and interact with each other and clash with each other, and then ending in a massive action scene that should be boring by the time it's done, but just isn't, because it knows how to uptick in just the right ways at just the right moment. Puny God. Yes. Number 6. Avengers Endgame. I'm not sure I can actually make a substantive argument as to why Endgame is a better film than Infinity War, because it might not be. Infinity War might be a better film from a construction, narrative, and the standard, objective measures. I just have more fun with Endgame. I think maybe it's because partly I just have more fun in the rousing triumph of it, because this is a triumphant film. It builds so much at the end, but it's also fun along the way. And even with the weight of everything going on, it is able to be fun. Even with the weight of everything, those tones should clash, but they don't. Oh man, this is another case of there's no way that's gonna work. Oh, they made it work. Number 5. Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 2. Quite possibly the most emotionally intelligent film on this list. The way that these characters have evolved and are growing or are resisting growing, and the journeys that they go on, what we learn about Quill, what he learns about himself, what we learn about Yondu, watching these people try and come to terms with themselves, with each other. And Ego was a great pick for a villain. Just especially the more that is a villain pick. The more you think about it on every level, the surface, the meta, the subtext. That was a terrific villain pick and worked so well. This is just, like I said, it's an emotionally brilliant film, is what it is. It juggles such complicated emotional arcs and journeys and conflict for its characters. And that sort of thing is usually so token in movies like that and this, but it's not here. It's the core of it. It's great. Number 4, Captain America, Winter Soldier. This used to be my number 1. There are little nitpicky things about it that I could point out, but I still think this is great. I love the shift in tone from the first Avenger. I love the chemistry between Steve and Falcon. And just the mission, Steve's obsession with getting Bucky back and not quite getting it in this film. The way that the espionage plot plays out. This is a way better interpretation of Hydra, where they are this infection and that you can't defeat because you can't even track it all down. Way better than the generic faceless soldiers yelling "Hail Hydra" all the time. Ugh. Such an upgrade across the... Now, Chris Evans as Steve Rogers is as good as he always was, but finally, the rest of the story elevated to meet how good he was. Yes! Number 3, Black Panther. Such a phenomenally designed film. The Afrofuturist aesthetic is incredible. to look at. The performances are great, from the fun villain of Claw to the wonderfully complex villain of Killmonger. Shuri, oh, like so many amazing characters, but also a really strong story for the lead character in this, because his is a journey not just of coming into his destiny and his power, but of also questioning that legacy that he just inherited. He becomes the king, the ruler of a kingdom, and then goes through an experience that makes him question the way this kingdom has been ruled up to this point, and he has not had reason to question that before. And it's just done so smartly, bringing up super legitimate, valid points and concerns, and it's really, really brilliantly done. Number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. Now look, this is one that I'm not sure I can justify from a Film 101 perspective. But Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. And I think Tom Holland gives my favorite performance as Spider-Man. Which is funny, because I tend to not like Teenage Spider-Man nearly as much as more adult 25 to 35 Spider-Man. But he's really good in this. And the Vulture, Michael Keaton, is amazing. Zendaya is great. She's got terrific chemistry. Ned is a wonderful character. This revision of Aunt May is terrific. All the changes, here's what I really love. All the changes were really thought through and smart. Just take a look carefully at what was done and what was changed and what was done different from the norm. Nothing was done arbitrarily. It was all done very carefully. And I feel like the exemplifying of that is Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson has always been a bully of Peter. That's his main thing. Now, back when the character was originally created, he was a big jock, because that was your standard bully. But that's not what bullying is like in the 21st century. What is he now? Oh, he's social media savvy. He's tech savvy. He thinks he's a DJ. He's a different kind of bully, but he's still a bully. He's a modern day bully for a modern day Spider-Man. Wonderfully done. Captures everything I love about Spider-Man, but brings it into the now. And I just love the hell out of this movie. Doesn't quite take number 1 though. Because number 1 had to be, for me, Captain America Civil War. This just has everything. It has amazing action set pieces, amazing emotional core, really believable arcs for the characters, great genuine clashes between them, ones that have been built up across the films up to this point, reluctant battles, great epic scope, and then, having the intelligence to go really big at the airport, but then get really down and dirty and personal at the climax when Steve and Tony have to duke it out. There is so much emotional weight in that fight. It's insane. This, for me, is the best of the MCU. That's my ranking. What's yours? Or what do you think of mine? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something on down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Usual stuff. You know what it is. Like, subscribe, share this around if you feel so inclined. I have a Patreon if you feel like supporting me and helping this channel grow. Thank you very much for your time. You don't have to do any of that stuff I mentioned if you really don't want to, because end of the day, you're the council, and I just run the meetings. Until next time, this council is adjourned.